Hi, I am Pat Iyer, and I'm delighted that you are joining us for this topic of how you can make your emails more powerful. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague and friend, Doreen Cumberford, who will be asking me some questions, and also we're going to be asking you some questions.
Hi, everybody. My name is Doreen, and my job and my role here today is to interview Pat to get as much magical and practical information as we can to make our emails much more effective. So, Pat has actually sent and received more emails than she could possibly count. And I'm sure I'm not the only one here that has a big inbox. We all have big inboxes, don't we? Pat has successfully used the email marketing to attract clients and is one of the first and only legal nurse consultants to create effective email series. Now, Pat has written a book on this and it's called Powerful Emails, How to Capture Your Client's Attention. There it is. She's holding it up now. And this is one of her 62 books. She serves writers as an editor, and in case you can't stay on for the entire time, Pat's website is patiyer.com, PATIYER.com. So let me ask you the first question. It's fun interviewing people. Why is the tone of an email important?
The tone is critical, Doreen, because that's the basis by which we are attempting to communicate with the recipient of our email. And as you study emails and you look at what's in your inbox, which you do usually at least once a day, and for some of us more than once a day, you pay attention to what are the headlines and the bodies of the emails that capture your attention. It is easy to think about writing an email to an impersonal entity, and we can lose sight of the fact that we're talking to people. We should be talking to them as friends, as people who have problems, frustrations, fears, or challenges that we may be able to help them with. We are interrupting their day with our email, and that interruption has to count and be meaningful.
That's very important. Building meaning and building relationships is what happens, isn't it? So, Pat, can you give us some tips on what makes an email more effective or in the
And
headline?
well, yes, and the headlines, I'm glad you asked me about that, Doreen, because the headline wording is critical. It drives about 80% of your success with an email. If you
Wow.
can't get somebody to open your email based on the headline, then all of the work that you put into composing the email is useless. You have to capture the attention of the person. You might have an inbox like mine that has 150 or 200 emails that have come in overnight. And I sit there and scroll through those emails and look at the headlines and who sent those emails to me and make a decision about whether or not I'm going to open that email. I have found recently, within the last couple of years, using my Gmail account, that I can select 100 emails at a time and have a little checkbox that gives me the option to delete them all with one click. So I go through and look at what people are contacting me about. Because there's a large number of people who are reading their email on their phone, and I'm referring to the checkbox looking at your email on your computer, but most people are looking at email on their phone. So they are looking at a short amount of space for the headline. You can't write long email headlines and expect the person who's getting that email to be able to see the entire message. Do a little experiment one time and look at the number of characters and spaces that you can see on your phone in an email. When I did it, it was about 34. But the older advice on writing email headlines is use 50 or 60 characters and spaces. That's going to be cut off. You want the most important words to be at the beginning of that headline because that's what's going to be available. And if you have internet marketers who are contacting you, and if you don't, I've got lots of them in my inbox I could refer you to. You can occasionally see the spam words and messages. Or if you go into your spam folder in your email, you will see the messages that are automatically shunted to that folder. If you have an uncle in Kenya who died, there's somebody there who's going to be willing to give you $5 million if you should just be willing to hand them over your bank account information. There's a number of words: free, sex, buy now, all cap words, multiple exclamations. They get the spam filters excited and say, Doreen is not getting that email because that's got words in it that would indicate that that's a spam email. So your trick, if you're trying to be clever on this as an internet marketer, and you'll see people do this, I'm not advising it, is that they might try to fool the spam filters by putting a number into a word. Like if the word is spook, for example, they might turn that O into a 0. Or the word free, they'll turn one of the E's into a number 3. Or they'll stick a decimal in the middle of a word like FRE.E. None of that is effective. The spam filters recognize those tricks. You don't want to have your email going into the spam filter box because you're using words that will trigger them.
Well, that's really great information, and I think it's good to think about how to use the least. What I heard you say was how to use short headlines, avoid anything that might be construed as spam, and keep them short. So I think that's really all very, very good advice. What other things can you do? What about using emojis? Can you use emojis? Is that okay, or does that go to spam?
No, the emojis are not necessarily triggering the spam filters, and you can get them in a variety of places on the internet. I have seen things like firecrackers and party hats and hearts and like little rockets that are blasting off.
Yeah.
Those have become more popular. I do see in my inbox more professional emailers, internet marketers using them than regular people like Doreen and I, if I can put us into the same category of,
Very
hi,
regular.
Doreen, are you excited about our email program? I wouldn't necessarily put a little rocket emoji in that. And that may also be generational issues. There are certain generations who are more comfortable with using emojis than others. So yes, you can use emojis, but use them sparingly. Also recognize that the headline has to capture attention, as I've been stressing. And one of the best ways to capture attention is to use numbers like 3 tricks and tips to doing X. 5 ways that you can do something.
Yep.
We are in love in internet communication with odd numbers. It is rare that you will see 2 tips or 4 tips or 6 tips or 8 tips. It's 3, 5, 7 till you get to 10. 10 is a good even number that people use, and 12. But I would caution you in today's short attention spans to avoid sending out either emails or writing blogs that promise people like 24 things that you need to do or 150 ways you can do something. You will be exhausted by the time you get through the first 10.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to make them meaningful and they're going to have some punch and impact, that's certainly true. If they're just going to be superficial, maybe you could go up to 10 or 12, right? But
Yes.
I can barely remember two things to do. Okay, number one, number two. And so when you're thinking about our mental capacity nowadays and how our attention span is shortened, all of this makes great sense, Pat, to me. So tell me about the use of, well, number one, talk about how-tos. How how-tos are something I think about for Google and, going to a Google video, how to open something, how to do something. Tell me about your perspective on how we use how-tos.
We are perpetually on the search, Doreen, for the shortcuts. We want to know instantly, we want to know directly applicable information on
Uh-huh.
how to complete something. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, with Google being number one. And people go to YouTube frequently for the how to's.
Mm-hmm.
My husband recently was given a telescope, and he was thrilled with the gift until he found out that you had to have the code that came with the instructions on the box that it was long thrown out. So he went onto YouTube to figure out how to program this uh, telescope. And it turned out, yes, it's easy to program once you have the code. YouTube couldn't give him the code. So unfortunately, this beautiful gift is now useless
Oh,
until he can take it to a shop where they might be able to help him. But they may look at him and say, Mr. Iyer, where is the code that came with the telescope?
yeah, yeah.
A how to email goes along with the same framework of how to plan your vacation. In Doreen's case, she's an expert on reentry. She might have an email on how to create a smooth transition back to your country of origin. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's looking for that information will save that email, will read it, file it away, because it offers directly applicable information.
Mm-hmm.
Even better is to combine a how to email with a video.
Mm-hmm.
More people are interested in reading, or more people are interested in watching videos than reading particularly long amounts of content.
Mm-hmm.
If you put a video inside an email, it increases your open rate by 21%. You have to clue your reader into the fact that there is an email in that, there is a video in that email, by putting the word video and putting it in those square brackets that are on your keyboard, not the ones with the little curls in them, but the square ones. And when you put the word video in those brackets, it increases the open rate. Also, it's useful to use those brackets for things like ending soon, coming next, starts tonight, begins tomorrow. Those things that we are programmed to focus on because they have a urgency factor, the brackets draw attention to them.
Boy, this is great information. This is very actionable, very specific. And you just had me looking at my keyboard to go, so where are those square brackets? So thanks, Pat. This is very, very practical and pragmatic information, very down to earth. So tell us a little bit about the use of triggers. You already started to talk a bit about urgency and scarcity and emotional words. You said, tell us about your chapter that is devoted to the power of headlines.
Yes, in the book, Powerful Emails, I have a whole chapter devoted to the use of words in the email body. You might be familiar with the work of Robert Cialdini, who talked about using triggers in marketing. He's a psychologist from Arizona who is a college professor who's done a lot of experiments on what causes people to take action. He laid it out in an eminently readable book
Mm-hmm.
about some of the factors, and you will invariably recognize these. You know them. When you see them, you recognize them, such as using urgency, that you've got to make a decision in a short time frame. Scarcity, meaning that there is a limited number.
Mm-hmm.
Using emotional words, as I mentioned, a word like freebie. We have a freebie Friday. Many people give away tools for free on Friday. The word fun has an emotional connotation. The must have, if you tell somebody you must have a certain thing, and
Mm-hmm.
there's something that's effortless. I mean, I want effortless in my life. I want things that are fast and easy. I
Sure.
like the word easy. I
Mm-hmm.
like effortless.
Mm-hmm.
You may have even gotten emails, as I have in the past, from marketers who've said, you don't have to do any work. You have to put in no effort, and the money will just roll in. And part of your brain goes, oh, really? How does that work? There's got to be some effort involved. So you have to be careful in using words like effortless to make sure that it really is effortless. A special offer, always tempting. You may offer part of your list of people you send email to that if they respond by X date, they get a special bonus or a special additional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Last chance.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, last chance. This is, oh, I mean, I have to get in on it or otherwise I will never be able to get it again.
Mm-hmm.
And something that's approved. That's another emotional word that makes whatever it is you're offering sound quite legitimate. Sprinkling some of these into emails is important. Again, and I haven't stressed this enough, there are business emails where you're marketing and staying connected to the people who've asked to be on your list. And there are personal emails that are transactional or reminders or communicating information. I'm focusing primarily on business marketing emails in this session.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we didn't mention, Doreen, curiosity.
Right.
Can you ask a question in
Mm-hmm.
your email headline
Mm-hmm.
that will cause the person to want to open it? And
Mm-hmm.
this is a tricky one because I've seen marketers who do this very well, and I've seen them who ask a question designed to create curiosity that doesn't create that reaction.
Mm.
An example might be, do you know what I did yesterday? Well, I don't really care. I don't know who you are and I don't know
Right.
what you did yesterday. But if you asked, do you want to know the secret to getting more clients? Maybe I would be curious. But if you can come up with an even more powerful headline that
Mm-hmm.
engenders curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
again, we're talking about 80% of the effort in writing emails is to get somebody to open the email
Mm-hmm.
before they can even get to the body. And then one other thing that people do, and I see it
Yeah.
probably on an ongoing basis, is using a code in their email that inserts the first name of the person.
Yes, I see that a lot, and I've started to get a lot of texts like that.
Yes, it is a popular method of getting somebody's attention.
And it works.
It does. In fact, I've been using email marketing for, well, since 2008. And I remember in the beginning, and it still happens occasionally, but in the beginning, when I would insert the name code, somebody would think that I actually sent out one by one emails and would respond back to me. One person said, oh, I see that you sent the email at 3:30 in the morning. I guess I'm not the only one who was awake at 3:30 in the morning. Well, I can schedule my emails to go out at any time that I want. And I just, commented back to her, and we kept the relationship going and the commentary going. One thing to be careful about is if you have a limited number of characters, and the person's first name is very long. Now,
Yeah.
Pat's easy and Doreen is easy, but if you
Yes.
have Jacqueline or Anna Maria Bella or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
Elizabeth Marie, something that's really long, you're using up a lot of spaces. And you can't control for that when you set up your email. You can't say only put in the first name code for first names that are less than 9 characters, for example.
Yeah.
That's the one disadvantage of putting it in the email.
Excellent. So I'm wondering, are we going to invite people to put question in saying what causes you to delete an email?
Yes, let's ask you to put into the chat, and you can put in the chat right in LinkedIn as you're watching this. What are the factors that would cause you to delete an email as you're scrolling through your inbox? Are there certain things, certain triggers, certain words, certain concepts or approaches that make you not want to open an email? And if you could put that in the chat, we're going to go on and then we'll come back and see what kinds of comments you've added.
Yes, I'm really curious to see what people's answers are to this question, Pat, because I think that knowing what we dislike is way more informative sometimes than what we respond to. So we can make sure we're not doing that behavior. Can you share some tips about the first line of an email? So let's pretend we've received an email and we have responded to the header and we've opened it. So tell me about the first line strategies, please.
That first line is going to show up on your phone as the body of the email, unless you use a mailing system that allows you to use a preview text. In the preview text, you will be able to see words that the person has put into their emailing system that will show up directly below the headline. The friendly tone, the appreciative tone, the reflection that shows that you're talking to a human is critical in that body of the email and in that first line of your email. And then I would suggest thinking about, if you're sending more than one paragraph of email text, to have just one subject per paragraph. Some people dump everything into a long paragraph and it's harder to read and it's harder to follow. So you definitely want just to keep one subject per paragraph. And then ideally have no more than about 100 to 150 words in that entire email. Maybe up to 200 at the most. But again, if you have a long email, your recipient may be tempted to put it in the to be read later folder, which means to be read never folder. Oh, when I have more time, I'll go back and read that email. Well, you won't. So keep it shorter to begin with. Or if you have to cover a couple of subjects, you might want to send 2 emails rather than to combine them all into one long email. And that way you're more likely to get responses.
Interesting. This is really great information. You know, I've read the book, but I'm still taking notes because I think to hear this more than once really makes it very actionable. And I think knowing that our emails should be between 100 to 150 words not only makes it more approachable and simpler to do, but also is being kind to the reader, because all of us are swamped or in danger of being swamped by so much information, right? So
That is for sure.
do we have any answers to the question yet?
We do. We have an answer from Diane, who said, in response to the question of what causes you to delete an email, is you are a winner or you've got a package. And Doreen, that's a great point. And Diane, because There are people who are just looking for opportunities to trick you into clicking on links. You have just been billed $495 for your semantic virus protection software. Click here if you feel this invoice has been in error. Well, I know that semantic doesn't cost this amount of money, $495. So you are becoming more suspicious. All of us are becoming more suspicious and aware
Yes.
of the links that we should not click on, emails that we shouldn't even open. And if Diane got one that said you've got a package, or here's the tracking information for the package we're attempting to deliver to you, and it's a person's email and not FedEx or UPS,
Yeah.
then you know that's just a trick. We're not opening up that email. So thank you, Diane, for that.
Yeah, that's an excellent example. So let's see. We've talked about spammy emails, uninteresting, too personal, that sort of thing. What do you have for our attendees today, Pat?
Oh, I have a powerful emails toolkit that shares with you some headlines that fit the criteria that we've been talking about in terms of desirable email headlines. There's also tips about writing emails and a checklist that you can use to evaluate your email to make sure that you are structuring this in a way that people are more likely to open. And you can get that at a link that I'm going to put on the screen, which is http mywriting.tips/ET, standing for email toolkit, mywriting.tips/ET. And that will come to you as a digital download in your email.
Thank you, Pat. So this is something that we can all do today in the next action step that we can all take in order to deliver more actionable, more interesting, and much more engaging emails. So there's one very often overlooked step that happens when we're all creating the emails. Can you tell us what that is, Pat?
Yes, the key in creating professional, well-written emails is proofreading and editing. Making sure that your grammar is correct, your spelling is correct, your punctuation is right. There are internet marketers who I have heard who have said, I deliberately put mistakes in my emails and on my website to show that I'm human. And I don't buy that as an editor. I think that there are mistakes there because the person who wrote it didn't take the time to proofread it, was not objective enough to see the errors, did it in a hurry, was careless. And that carelessness comes across as not being professional and detail oriented. Now, let me be sure to say to you that I have had typos in my emails because I didn't proofread and edit it. And I'm not sitting in front of you today saying that I am perfect, that I have never made a mistake. Often I find that if I send an email late at night and I'm tired, I don't have that capability or I don't take the time that I should. So I school myself to not do emails late at night.
Yeah.
What I have in Gmail, and your mailing system might have this, is that there is a delayed send. And you can set in the settings the number of seconds that you want to have tick off before the email goes. And when you set that with enough of a window, you can click an undo and open up the email and fix the mistake that you spotted while you were watching the email getting ready to send. That has saved me a number of times when I have not taken the time, been too tired to provide that critical step. We are all detail-oriented people. We all make judgments about people, so don't set yourself up for being judged negatively because you've missed this step of checking your email to make sure that it says what you want. You haven't missed any words, because spell checker is not going to point out, even if it's embedded in your email system, it's not going to point out words you've missed. It'll point out misspelled words, but not all of them. Because if I talk to you, Doreen, about filling out a form and I spell that word FROM, spell checker is not going to pick that up. It's going to say, all right, that word's spelled correctly. Let's let that one go.
That is so true. And I think that's very good wisdom. I also would add to that that I like to write my emails on my computer, and I never write them on my phone, because I noticed if I'm doing social media on my phone and I'm creating a post, I'll often read it and reread it and send it, and then a few hours later realize that there's an error in there. So I had to go in and edit it. So I think that that's really good advice to communicate with your audience when you're on top of your game, when you have really good energy, and when and double check and do everything to make every single publication or every single piece that is on a screen that someone will read absolutely perfect. And Pat, you're such a great example for this with your 62 books that you've edited and written and edited. That is a skill that maybe we are not paying as much attention as we should in nowadays society. So thanks for that reminder. That's really great. Let me see. Are you going to ask about the one thing you never want to do when you compose an email?
I would love to ask our viewers what your thoughts are. In your experience, the question is to put in the chat, what is one thing you never want to do when you compose an email? And I'm curious about what that question stirs up for you. What is the one thing you never want to do when you compose an email? Put that in the chat, and we'll come back to you in a minute to see what you came up with.
So while people are doing that, let's can you give us a few more powerful tips about emails right now? Like picking words, selecting words. I noticed earlier you mentioned fun. And when I see people on a daily basis, and I just in the store or, a grocery checker, someone like that, I always tell them, make sure you have fun today, because everybody lights up with fun. So I'm really curious about how you connect to that side of us that lights us up in an email.
It's amazing you picked that word, Doreen, because my younger son always ends every conversation with, have fun today.
Yeah, me too.
Always. Always.
Me too. We're
Now,
twins.
we have a kindred soul. I can tell he's connected to you and that commonality. The words that are best to use in an email are short ones. They're familiar words. They're words that will be easy for people to understand. They're specific. We talked a little bit about some of the emotional words, and we talked about fast and easy. But probably factor that we haven't covered yet is to look at the use of the word you and your versus I and me and mine. When you are in the editing stage in your email, take a look at the sentences that you've written. Is there a way for you to turn them around so that you're putting you in that sentence far more than I? We spend about 97% of our time thinking about ourselves, our problems, our opportunities, our world. That gives us 3% of our attention span for everything else. Other people, news, plays, music, anything else that you could think of. So if you are focusing on your audience when you write an email, then your yous, yours, we's, and ours should far outnumber me and my and mine. That's a key point. I heard an internet marketer several years ago say, print out your web page and take a pink pen in one hand, a yellow one in the other, and circle all of your I, me, I, mine, and then circle of the you and the yours, and see how you can change that ratio. If you've got too many I's and me's and you're not talking to your audience, how can you revise that? That applies to web pages and it applies to emails as well.
Interesting. So it really applies to all communication online. Does that also apply to books? How-to books?
It depends upon where you are in the book. In
Oh,
the introduction,
mm,
for example, it is common to focus on a structure of a chapter where you're drawing attention to the problem that you presume that the reader has, outlining what you want to share in the book that will address that reader's problems, and then explain towards the end of that first chapter what qualifies you to talk about that problem.
mm-hmm.
So for Doreen, who's an expert in the re-entry world, she may talk in the beginning part of her book about the common problems that people experience when they leave their home culture and go elsewhere and then are coming back. That may be the problem. And what kinds of issues that creates for the reader, and then why Doreen is familiar with this issue given all the places in the world that she has lived in and then come back to her country of origin. So that would be an example of how to structure that first chapter. After that, generally, I and me don't come up much in a book. Then the focus is on here's how this information will help you. Here are some practical strategies. Here are stories of other people who have surmounted this issue.
Well, I know that was a little bit of a red herring that I threw you, but I just thought people might be wondering that for other things that they're writing other than their emails, because it seems to me that if you have a skill in writing good emails, that skill is probably transferable to other parts of your business. So
Yes.
thank you for being patient with that,
Oh,
Pat.
you're welcome. And it's a preview of what we'll be talking about
Thank
next week
you.
at this time.
That's true. Thank you. So let's see. Do we have any other answers in the chat?
We do. We have an answer from Diane who said that one thing that you never want to do is offend the reader
Mm,
or appear stupid or non-professional.
mm,
Offending the reader that's a key one. And people have some known triggers. Sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what would be offensive. That's where you need to understand who's in your list,
mhm,
who are, and to stay away from controversial or difficult topics.
mhm,
That can be tricky. I remember one woman who was offended because, and this was many years ago, she had a name that could have been either a man or a woman's name. Now, we have many more names that could be either now than we did then. She was of a different nationality, and
mhm,
my
mhm,
mailing system assumed that she was a man based
mhm.
on her name. It was Dear Mr., and she was a woman. So we changed that and learned that in order to not offend people, we were better off saying Dear Attorney and
Mm,
then not making a reference to male or female. A couple of other things that you never want to do is you never want to send an email when you're angry because your wording may not be the sweetest. I grew up with a mother who said, you should always make sure that your words are sweet because one day you may have to eat them.
that's a great quote, Pat.
And I learned that 20 years ago when I was president of the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants and sent an email late at night when I was angry to a single person. And unbeknownst to me, she decided that she would forward my email to 100 people,
Oh.
none of whom had any business getting that email. It was directed to
Mm.
her to ask her to stop doing something that she was doing. And then I got flooded with emails from people who were saying, Pat, what are you doing? What's going on? Well, you know what's happening? And I'm thinking, I didn't mean for this email that I
Mm.
wrote in anger to
To go
go
back.
that far all over the United States. So
Mhm.
I learned from that experience. I still have a scar right here in my brain from that
Mhm.
experience, never to send an email when I was angry. We talked about proofreading. Not
Yeah.
proofreading is something that you never want to do. And also, Dale Carnegie said the sweetest sound on earth is the sound of your name.
Mhm.
You never want to misspell the recipient's name.
Mhm.
When I was getting ready to send an email to Doreen, I put an extra E at the end of her name, and then I checked her email address, and I thought, no, it's not Doreene.
Thank you.
It ends in the N, not in the E. So I didn't want to offend her by misspelling her name.
Yeah, and it's amazing the small things that trigger us nowadays. And I have to say, as a cross-cultural consultant and transitions, um, it does vary from culture to culture, even from British English to American English. And so it's very important to be careful and to be as precise as we possibly can be.
For sure.
Now, let's see. Our viewers are going to want to know more about how to get this toolkit and the book. So, would you tell us the links, please, or can you put them up on the screen, Pat, and tell us a bit about the book?
Sure. The toolkit again is available at mywriting.tips/ET. And the book, which is Powerful Emails, How to Capture Your Client's Attention, that's available on my website. And that address that takes you directly into the bookstore is at patiyer.com/books. And we appreciate you being here today. We have time for a few questions while I will let you know about next week. I've been teasing you a little bit about the opportunity to learn more from Doreen. Doreen will be presenting a LinkedIn Live with me a week from today at this same time, noon Eastern, 11 Central, 10 Mountain, 9 Pacific. And our topic is crossing cultures well, life hacks and strategies to repatriate, return, or re enter. That will be a week from now on June 27th. Doreen is filled with firsthand experiences in moving from cultures to cultures. And she has recognized in her work that there are many people who make this kind of a transition, some of them well, some of them painfully, some of them don't make the transition well at all. And then for many of them, when they return to their country of origin, they experience a whole series of adjustments that they didn't anticipate. So if you return back to my LinkedIn channel a week from today, you'll have an opportunity to hear Doreen talk about these questions and these challenges as I interview her. Well, let
Well,
me check.
thanks, Pat.
You're welcome. And I'm checking the chat. I'm not seeing any questions yet, Doreen. I appreciate everybody's attention who has been listening to this program so far and welcome you to come back next week for a new event, new topic, and with Doreen.
Thank you, everybody, and good luck and lots of success in creating Let's go out there and make zingy emails that engage people, inspire people, and help build your legal nurse consulting business.
Thank you, Doreen. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.